Hello, everyone, and welcome to the monthly Magma community meeting. It is 7 o'clock Pacific time, top of the hour, but as we have a very small group so far, I'm going to go ahead and give it 2 or 3 more minutes to let people join before we get started. Thanks for joining us, and thanks for your patience. Hi, everyone. This is Phil Ritter, and this is the monthly Magma community meeting. It does look like we have a very small group this evening, only about a quarter or so of the people that I saw on the RSVP list appear to be here, but I think I'd rather get going. Just a reminder, the purpose of our community meetings is really introductory and to be a Q&A time about the project. Really anything is fair game. We have a couple of our key team members here with us this evening. I see Timothy, I see Amar, I see Shabam, who's become very active in the project recently, and Oriel. So about a third of the people on the bridge are actually active team members, and we'll have plenty of opportunity for Q&A, and we can take the call wherever it is that you would like to go. So I have a relatively brief agenda. Just a quick comment on the Magma ecosystem and what we're about. I have news on the Magma 1.5 release, which we announced this evening, California time. Timothy is here with us, and he's going to walk through our CI process update, just as a FYI for the team, perhaps to generate some questions and engagement. And then we're going to talk about some of the possible engagement opportunities where people can join in with us and have time for an open Q&A. So Magma is really about enabling the open source telco and ultimately catalyzing around an open source 5G movement. The product itself is access technology agnostic, 4G or 5G or Wi-Fi, with the 5G capabilities currently in development and ready for testing and an alpha release in the June timeframe. And ultimately, the goal is to help dramatically reduce the total cost of ownership of running wireless networks. Part of what we're doing with Magma, in addition to building the product, is working to build an ecosystem where we gather together the strengths of various industry groups, like the Open Infra Foundation, Linux Foundation, Open Air Interface Software Alliance, and others who are working to join us, with vendors and operators driving adoption within their groups, getting feedback with some active support from various research projects in academia, and then working with a number of startups. And I see a couple of them represented here on the call this evening. So we're very excited about where this is going. And part of that excitement is built around the pace of development that we've been able to achieve. You may know that we had the 1.6 release in the first quarter was delayed until late March, early April, as we had some desire to get it to a really high quality state that we could use as a launching pad for future releases. And now, just a few weeks after, we've brought the 1.5 release to the ecosystem just this evening. And 1.5 is has some very interesting changes in it. We've introduced S1 mobility within the Access Gateway. Our prior deployment supported mobility only on the X interfaces, which limited the number of eNodeBs, GNodeBs that were able to support mobility operations. And we brought the S1 mobility into the product. We've also rebased the Access Gateway primary operating system onto Ubuntu 20.04, with the Ubuntu release chain being our objective for a go forward supported base OS for the Access Gateway. In 1.5, we still support the Debian release that we've used previously, so there won't be any forced or breaking change upgrade. But as we move forward into 1.6, we will be only supporting Ubuntu. We've also brought inbound roaming to the product. We've enhanced the PLMN restrictions so that we can ensure that only UEs from authorized networks with SIMs from authorized networks are in use. We've introduced a IMEI or mobile device serial number blacklist so that we can help take care of troublesome devices, and then a number of improvements in the orchestrator and management systems. The full release notes are here on the chart, and if you bear with me just a minute, I'm gonna post that into the chat window so that you don't have to type a crazy long. Yeah, I'll get that as we go forward, as Timothy starts talking about the CI changes. So I wanted to introduce Timothy. He's leading a lot of our integration and DevOps activities within the Magma project, and he's going to talk a little bit about what we're doing with the continuous integration process for the project.
Hey, Phil, thank you. Thanks for the introduction. All right, I'm going to talk about the CI system that we currently have. Next slide, please. So I'm going to talk about the current status of CI, like what we currently have and how we want to improve it. In order to improve it, we have been designing a new solution. So I'm going to go through that and present you the solution that the community built up and has been approved by the TSC. Now I'm going to talk about the pros and cons of that solution, and then the pipeline we set up. Next slide, please. I made a simple drawing of the current solution. So as you can see on top, you have the github.com Magma, which is the repo on GitHub where the Magma code is. And as you can see just below that, we have multiple CI solutions from different entity working on Magma. So from the left to the right, sorry, we have FreedomFi Jenkins, we have Circle CI that is owned by OpenInfra, we have GitHub Action, we have an OAI Jenkins and an OAI GitLab CI. FreedomFi, OpenInfra, and OAI are entities working on the Magma project, contributing on a daily basis. And they decided to spin up a CI in order to test every commit being pushed to master. So why do we have so many different CI systems? So for example, the FreedomFi Jenkins has been spun up because they're using virtualized node that can use nested virtualization on it. So most of the tests that Magma is running, for example, the integration test, we're running it in a virtualized environment that is going to virtualize on top of that all the OS version that we need. So in order to do that, you need nested virtualization, which is not allowed on every CI that you can find on the market. That's why they spinned up their own FreedomFi Jenkins. They hooked it to Packet, a Packet hypervisor. Packet is a bare metal provider. And on top of that, they virtualized nodes that are able to do like virtualization inside it. So as you know, Magma is a very big project, very complex. So that's why we need multiple CI like that. SQL CI run by OpenInfra is basically using SQL CI cloud instances and bare metal instances that are in the lab. SQL CI is the only one that can push to the registry. So the registry is basically a server that hosts all the packages that we built for CI. So when you do apt install Magma, in fact, it's contacting that registry, getting that package and pulling it on your server. GitHub Action is running GitHub Action nodes. It's a lot about linting code. So making sure that the Python code that you generated is alike as the Python code that we have. So we are just basically setting up standards and making sure that with GitHub Action that the code that you produce meet the standard that we want. And the last but not least is the OAI Jenkins, which has a bunch of bare metal servers. It runs some deep testing on the OAI integration and the core of the Magma project. So that's the current status for a newcomer and a developer that want to contribute to Magma. It's very difficult to understand like which CI is what. And the goal of the big project behind the new CI is to unify everything. Next slide, please. So there are a bunch of current issues with all the tooling that we have. For example, for SQL CI, some very important tests that we ran, for example, the LT integration test that make sure that you didn't break any like LT scenario, like attach, detach, etc. They'll run after your commit land on master, which means that even though we've been going through CI on your pull request and it was all green, we landed your commit on master, a job is going to run and you might have introduced a bug on master. So that was one of the problems. The second problem is that the SQL CI that we have right now cannot host custom runners. And the last but not least, all the integration tests rely on the lab bare metal nodes. So we have to host like 17 nodes in a lab that are plugged to the SQL CI. We created our own scheduling, etc. And we just want to kill that because many of the CI solutions now allow you to just plug and play nodes, custom nodes. On the Jenkins FreedomFi, the node are virtualized with an unsupported version. So I'm not going to go through the details, but when you do Vagrant up Magma, we're using VirtualBox as a VM provider, and they were using libvirt for like performance point of view. And having to deal with like two different two different virtualization tool can be tricky because it's different configuration. They had a load issue because as they virtualize the node manually, it couldn't scale up and scale down. They had security issue because you could run on every pull request their job. And some important jobs are not mandatory, meaning that you could merge the pull request without having to wait for the Jenkins FreedomFi result. For the Jenkins GitLab OAI, the job were not mandatory, and it was more about like having every developer going through the Jenkins and checking by himself. So as you see, like we had a lot of issues and we wanted to merge to like a unified system. Next slide, please. So I'm not going to go through that whole list. If you want to check that presentation, it's going to be available. We're going to post it on Slack. Please go through it. Then you can ping me. I'm Tim on the Magma call Slack. But basically, we drew a list of all the things that we want for the new CI tool, and we've been through all the CI tool on the market and trying to find the best one that could tick all the boxes that you see on the screen. So for example, I'm going to take like 2 of those. We needed to be able to have a UI that can rerun, follow job, and that will be exposed to every contributor without having to add a new user manually every time someone is trying to test its code on a pull request. On top of that, we wanted the new CI tool to be able to run a Dockerized environment, VM, bare metal, custom node that maybe enable nested virtualization, but also nodes that we have, so server that we have in the lab, and all doing like deeper testing. Because we don't only use CI to test every release. For example, the one that we are releasing today, 1.5, went through a bunch of testing environment. We have TerraVM owned by some Magma people. We have Spirent, and those are doing like load testing on the Magma H core, and also trying different scenario to make sure that the LT hasn't been broken by the recent changes. So we needed a CI to be able to connect to those nodes, which are VPN protected in a lab. Next slide, please. So again, I'm not going to go through this table, but what we did is we splitted the job, and every team, so FreedomFi, OAI, Facebook, and other like open source developers, they basically picked a product and made sure that it could tick all the boxes. And what we did is we drew like this huge table and made sure that the CI tool that we were benchmarking could tick all the boxes. So if you're interested in that, again, it's going to be on Slack. You can go through the presentation. It has all the information why we picked that CI tool and why we didn't pick the other one. So next slide, please. So here is the solution that went through the community and the TSC, and that has been approved and we're currently migrating to. So as you can see on the left part of the screen, you have the GitHub Magma repo. That GitHub Magma repo will be hooked to 2 different CI systems. The first one will be GitHub Actions with a bunch of GitHub Action nodes. So basically when you subscribe and when you enable GitHub Action on your GitHub repo, GitHub, if you're open source, GitHub gives you free nodes that you can use. So on those nodes, you can run Python, you can run Go, you can even run Docker containers. However, the type of nodes that they have is limited. Like you cannot run your own node. You cannot run your own AWS images. You cannot run or install your own OS. You cannot virtualize your OS on it. And that limited us because, for example, currently in 1.5, we're still working with Debian. And in the future, we're gonna drop Debian. But right now, we're still working on it, and we're still offering it to the community. So we have to test it, and that's why we went with a second solution that will do the job that GitHub Action cannot do right now. We talked to GitHub Action team, and they told us that in the future they're going to enable other solutions, but right now they can't because it's not ready. It's still in development phase. So as you can see, we coupled that GitHub Action with a Linux Foundation Jenkins. This Linux Foundation Jenkins will be hosted by Linux Foundation, so the Magma community won't have to deal with disk space, and maintaining that Jenkins on a daily basis. It will be done by the Linux Foundation team. And by default, they enable you the VX host nodes. What is VX host? It's a bare metal and cloud provider. I think it's from Canada. Yeah, I think it's from Canada. And the best thing about this cloud provider is that if you take the big VMs there, they enable nested virtualization. So we will be able to run the integration testing directly in the cloud, which is like a great step forward. On top of that, we're going to plug that Jenkins to all the lab testing environment I told you about, like Spirent, TerraVM. We have a bunch of DS tester, and obviously those are VPN protected. So this Jenkins will be able to connect to the VPN protected nodes that we have in the lab. So it's a very simple graph now. We don't have 5 solutions, we only have 2. And in the future, we're going to move to only one, which will be GitHub Action, but it's not ready yet. Next slide, please. So what are the pros and cons of that solution? Why did we pick GitHub Action? So GitHub Action has a strong GitHub integration, which makes sense because it's basically the same company. It's inbuilt with GitHub, so you don't have to go to an external sources to check your CI results. It can annotate pull requests with CI commands. It can run 90% of our jobs, or as most of the Magma project are Dockerized or soon to be, and it's hosted by GitHub, so we don't have to manage the infra itself. The cons of that is that custom runners are not secure, meaning that, for example, Tim, want to add a node, for example, my laptop as a node of the Magma project and be able to run some stuff on my laptop, which is at my house. So I add it as a node. So I will be able to, when I do a pull request, run the test on my laptop directly from github.com. However, when someone is going to fork the Magma project, like we all do when we want to contribute, we will be able to use my laptop as a node. So there is no restriction. Like you cannot say like only a list of approved people can use my laptop that I just added as a node. So this is a very big problem and a security flaw. GitHub told us that they're working on it. They already made some progress. There was an article last week saying that no, you need to approve external contributors to use your CI. So they're going to the right path, but they're not ready yet. And the other problem is it can only run 90% of our jobs, which is not 100%. The pros of the Linux Foundation Jenkins that we picked is that it's hosted by Linux Foundation, so we don't have to bother like with the infra. It can securely attach any kind of node. So for example, we can attach the TerraVM Spirent environment testing that we have in the lab. In the future, if a partner, I see some ARM people in the audience, like if ARM want to add like a bunch of ARM nodes, we'll be able to add those and create some testing on those in the future. It will be definitely doable and scalable. Last but not least is that Linux Foundation, they are experts at hosting Jenkins. They are doing that for a lot of open source projects. In fact, if you go to their website, it lists you all the projects they are supporting. and they are hosting their CI. The cons is that a lot of the Jenkins configuration go through tickets with the support. So you don't have, so it's hosted by Linux Foundation, which is good, but you don't have full control on it, which was the main cons of it. Next slide, please. Okay, in this slide, I just showed you how great GitHub Action can be. So for example, on the top left-hand corner, sorry, this slide is a bit messy now, I realized it. So this is a pull request, this is the code. And as you can see in yellow, GitHub Action ran on the pull request and attach a comment directly on the line where the problem was. And it's just posting a comment and being like, oh, like there is a problem, the comparison of integer expression of different signals, int and blah, blah, blah. So basically all the CI tooling that we're gonna put on pull request. So for example, linter, building errors, they will run on your pull request, but also comment on the line where the problem is. So that will allow contributors to be able to see where the problem is without having to check the CI logs. The second thing is it can integrate with bots. For example, we're currently using Dependa bots, which gives you like insight when a security flows happen within one of your dependencies, and automatically tells you if you have to bump it up or bump it down. And it sometimes even do the pull request for you. So you just have to approve the pull request and it will automatically bump the package to a newer version that has the security patch. Last but not least, on the bottom left-hand corner, this is a very simple workflow of the GitHub Action UI, and it's within GitHub. So you don't have to leave the website to see the workflow happening on your pull request. Next slide, please. So the timeline, we already created the proposal, it's done. We submitted to the community on 4/14, and the community was very happy about it. We discussed about it, we tried to improve it. We submitted it to the TSC on 4/18th. It was approved 3 days after, and we already started the migration of the current Circle CI to GitHub Actions, and we are in the process to get the new Linux Foundation Jenkins instance, which is going to take around 2 more weeks to get it. When that is done and we have the Jenkins Linux Foundation, we're going to migrate the integration test to it. And hopefully, if the testing phase of this new integration test is successful, we're going to kill the old CI and move to the last drawing, the last schema I showed you with only GitHub Action and Jenkins. Next slide, please. Any questions, suggestion, please hit me up right now. You can also contact me on Slack. I'm Tim on Slack, or you can ask your question directly in the DevOps channel. We'll be happy to discuss with you and take your ideas. Thank you, guys.
Okay, thanks, Tim. Before we move on to the Q&A, I do want to take an opportunity and give a little bit of an advertisement for the various engagement opportunities that we have with the project. And the 3 primary standing calls are on Mondays. ULAS hosts a gateway development call at 8:30 Pacific time. On Wednesdays, we have the weekly DevOps continuous integration call. Timothy, I think, just gave a great example of the work product that comes out of that activity and the follow-up from that. And then on Wednesdays, we have the more general engineering weekly calls. For invitations and bridge info, the note on the slide says to DM Kendall on the Magma Slack, which you still can. but all of the meeting invite information for these 3 meetings has been moved to the public calendar. And I see that Kendall has just dropped a link into the chat on this call for the public calendar. So please take a look at that. And then lastly, I just want to talk about a couple of other ways you can engage with us. Of course, our website is being updated regularly with information about the project. But by far the most interesting ways to engage are on GitHub itself with the code and the discussions and issues around the code, and then the Slack channel, which has become a very vibrant community over the last 5 or 6 weeks. And Kendall, I don't know if you're able to, or I will try to get the link to the, oh, there you go. There's a nice abbreviated link for the join link on the Slack. And now for the last 30 minutes or so that we have left, the main purpose of this meeting tonight is really an open Q&A and discussion from people who may be new to the project, or if you've been around for a while, have something on your mind. If you want to talk about the 1.5 release, or have any interesting work that you've been working on that you may want to bring up and chat about. So I will open the floor to anyone and everyone. Again, it's a very small group this evening. So what's up? Todd.
Yes, thank you. So I just,
If you wouldn't mind, just a brief introduction, by the way, so we know who we're talking to.
my name is Todd Peterson. I'm an old computer guy that works with numerous nonprofits in the Charlotte, North Carolina area.
Oh,
One,
fabulous.
one of those being the Charlotte Mecklenburg Public Library System. And I try to keep abreast of a lot of the new technologies for their chief innovation officer. An article came out about FreedomFi in which you were mentioned, which led me to this meeting tonight. Could you describe how your products and how Magma is integrated with FreedomFi?
Sure. FreedomFi is one of the system integrator partners that we work with on the Magma project. So when FreedomFi delivers their gateway, it actually is the Magma software that they have done some work to package and perhaps harden. They have developers that participate as part of the Magma project, and all of the work that they do, they contribute back upstream into the Magma project. So really they are a partner of Magma, and the product that they sell as their gateway is a product that has its foundation as the Magma Access Gateway and Network Management System and Orchestrator that go with that. And we've set up that arrangement with FreedomFi and a couple of other organizations to work as integrators who can provide the kind of supported product that organizations like the nonprofit you're working with would actually need in order to make it useful to them, because we don't anticipate that any organization that might choose to deploy a fixed wireless access or private wireless network would really bring the technical expertise that you need to the table to do that. If you want maybe an example that works, although it has some limitations, as Canonical's Ubuntu is to Linux, FreedomFi is to Magma, or as Red Hat's products are to Linux. FreedomFi's product is to Magma. That analogy is probably a bit stretched, and I won't go into the nuances of it, but that's the essence.
Thank you. We're very excited about this. I mentioned to Kendall, we have a $500,000 IMLS grant where we're we will be providing Wi-Fi to the needy in Charlotte.
Okay.
We were looking at setting up a pretty standardized Wi-Fi, which was using some of our services in town, with towers and possibly doing CBRS because we've got a lot of trees, et cetera. Bottom line is, then we saw the thing with the 5G, which opens up another possibility, possibly at a cheaper cost for deployment. So it was very exciting to hear about FreedomFi and you folks, and we'd like to continue some more discussions on this before we go down a path that we might have done better going a 5G route.
Todd, I'm very excited to hear that, and I think that we'd love to continue working with you on that. You are certainly welcome to message me on the project Slack channel. I think I'm there as Phil. I haven't checked my own name, but it's easy enough to find. Phil Ritter is who you're searching for, and perhaps we could have some further discussion and get you connected with the project, perhaps with FreedomFi or others, and find a way to help you out.
Thank you very much. That's all I had for tonight.
Anyone else?
Yes, I have a question related to 5G. ARM, our message on the Slack, like 5G will be available in 1.6. And do we have like any roadmap, like when will that be released? Any month or date?
Amar, you want to talk about roadmap? Or would you like me to? I'll take Amar's silence as I will. Right now, the expectation is that 1.6 will release before the end of the second quarter or during the first half of 2021. And that will contain our initial 5G standalone services, and we're working with partners through Open Air Interface and may possibly have some 5G non-standalone capability at or about that same time, targeting option 3B or 3X. I can't remember the exact nature of it.
Yeah, so sorry, I was on mute. Yeah, so 3X is, so yeah, date is June 28th, and then we're targeting 3X.
Yeah, so those two capabilities, the initial capability for 5G standalone, which given the state of handsets and G-Node Bs, may be an emerging technology, and then option 3X capabilities for 5G non-standalone, which is 5G with the 4G signaling plane.
Will that be an alpha stage?
Yeah, I think because we won't have had it field deployed anywhere prior to that release, it would be unwise to represent it as anything other than an alpha stage release.
Okay, thanks.
Anyone else?
Yeah, hi, this is Jordan from Connect 5G.
Hi, Jordan.
Hi. Question for Tim. Since you mentioned the ARM during the CDCI, so how can we cooperate to put the ARM build as a part of the standard CDCI?
Hey, that's actually a good question. Yeah, so there are a couple of options. If you want like to contribute and give us ARM runners, we can hook it up to Jenkins and work together on the code to just trigger it. However, if you can run those in a virtualized environment, we can use our node that enable that, or even in the Docker container if we can, because I think you can do cross compilation things. We can just work together, use some of your nodes, all nodes, and just make it happen. And on top of that, we'll be hosting those ARM packages in our public registry, because that's something I forgot to mention, but 1.5 comes up with the new open source registry. So now you'll be able to download the Docker images. You will be able to download the focal and stretch versions of the HGW packages. In the future, you'll be able to download the Helm charts. We're currently working on it. So yeah, we can definitely make room for some ARM specific packages.
Perfect. I mean, this is nice to hear. Currently, as you know, we are building it in Docker. So we can try to use the cross-compiling from the Docker.
Definitely,
so definitely. I mean, we can continue talking on Slack over this.
Exactly. Thanks, man.
Yeah, thanks.
Hey, Jordan, would you mind taking just a moment and briefly describing what it is that you showed and announced on the Slack channel earlier this week?
Yes, I mean, so let me first introduce myself. So I'm Jordan. I'm working with Connect 5G, and we are working on a project to port Magma to ARM. So a couple of days ago, we had one of the major milestones which we achieved. Though we have finished porting a couple of months ago and we were running multiple versions, everything was running in a virtual environment, and it was more of a super manual type of task to create the packages and install them on the virtual environment. So a couple of days ago, we finally managed to create standard installation packages and to install them on a physical device. And as it happened, this physical device is Raspberry Pi. So for people who were on the Slack channels, I've posted the picture of the first Raspberry Pi, which was running Magma. And at the moment it's running Magma master, so we will continue working only on the master at the moment. Now we can compile all other previous branches except 1.4 and 1.5. For 1.4 and 1.5, we are still working to be able to compile them for ARM. And also we were struggling with Envoy, which was introduced in 1.4 and 1.5, and we did this is at the moment ARM project will work without Envoy. So I mean, for us who are working on Magma was extremely exciting news, and also it opens a big possibility for everybody who wants now to deploy Magma as his home project, provided that he has rights for the licenses or he has CBRS. So now it's very cheap to deploy it and test it.
Yeah, that's actually fabulous. Getting the proof point on the ARM deployments and showing the lightweight nature of Magma, even though a more interesting deployment probably requires a little more I/O than the Raspberry Pi can deliver. The fact that it can run in that small footprint is fabulous and very, very exciting.
Yeah, I mean, correct. It's fantastic that you are able to run it on such a limited hardware. I mean, it shows the case that Magma is capable to be run as embedded software. So small footprint and not much requirement on the CPU. Though yes, I/O. I mean, you can run it only as a home project, as I said. It's not for a commercial grade project.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.
Yeah. I have a question for Jordan. Like the Raspberry Pi image which you showed, what access gateway was running on it?
Yes, AGW was running on it.
And I think in future, the access gateway will be Dockerized. So how will it work on the ARM machines as in Raspberry Pi after
Yeah, I
it has been
mean,
Dockerized?
it will work without problem on our machine Dockerized. I mean, we are currently building it in Docker, so our first installation was in Docker. Then we
So
installed it
yeah.
on a virtual machine in Amazon Cloud, and then this is the physical installation. So definitely you can run it in Docker, though there is a setup you need to do for a Docker. I mean, for the network interfaces basically.
Okay. Thanks.
Thanks, Jordan. Again, that's great to hear, and great that this was an effort put forward by, members of the community or teams that weren't uh, uh, sponsored by the project. So, anyone else? We have about 14 minutes left on our time. I know it's a small group. I don't want to keep people if the questions aren't there, but I don't want to stop prematurely either.
Yeah, I had a question for Todd. You said you read a blog. Was it around Magma connecting to the Helium's blockchain?
No, and I sent it over, just say I'll send it to everyone. It was from a tech magazine, and it referenced Magma in it, primarily about Wi-Fi. It was from, hang on. Let's see. Got it here. Okay, it was from ZDNet. Yeah, 1 second. And so it was just a matter of walking through the steps to then find you folks as part of that. There's the article.
Thanks, Todd.
Yeah, thanks.
Anyone else? Again, I don't want to hold people here just to hold our time. So I want to take a moment to thank everyone for joining this evening. I think this was, although a small group, some really interesting topics that came up. Todd, I got your DM on Slack. I'll get back to you tomorrow morning and set something up so we can talk further. And then one last call for questions from anyone before I say thank you and have a good evening or morning or afternoon, depending on where you're at in the world. Okay. Thanks very much. Please do join us in our standing engineering calls, and we look forward to hearing great things about how the 1.5 release is working out for folks. Thanks for joining us. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks.